Awesome. Thanks, Kathy. So just to reiterate what Kathy said, thank you all so much for being here today for our Problem Gambling Awareness Month event. We have really great conversations coming up. So we're all really looking forward to it, and we're happy you're all able to be here. So without further ado, now that you saw the title slide and you know you're in the right spot, because we are a larger group today, for the sake of time, we're just going to do some quick intros in the chat. We just always love knowing who's in the room, and we think it makes it easier for all of us to interact and feel more comfortable throwing stuff in the chat and asking questions. So if you all wouldn't mind, if you can, take a moment and just type into the chat your name, your organization or school, or kind of whoever you're representing, if you're representing anybody today. And then our question to kind of anchor us into this conversation is, how have you engaged with Problem Gambling Awareness Month so far? So Problem Gambling Awareness Month is a whole month of March. We are kind of rounding out the end here. So we would love to hear how you all have been interacting. If you haven't yet, that is absolutely okay. We've still got a couple days, and you're all doing that by being here. So we'll hold a space just for a minute or two for folks to introduce themselves. So your name, your organization, and how you have engaged with Problem Gambling Awareness Month, or maybe how you plan to do so in the next few days. See a lot of familiar names in the chat, also some new names, so that's great. Thank you all for being here. PGAM proclamation, awesome. A PSA, yes, the PSAs were so great. I'm so happy to have you all here with us today. Lots of webinars. Yeah, there's a lot of webinar offerings, which is really great. I think there's still a couple more coming. I think there's another one tomorrow too. So keep your eyes peeled for that. All right, so feel free to continue answering those questions in the chat, but we are just going to move on to make sure that we have plenty of time for the content. So just really quickly, before we turn it over to our friends over at MCCA, we just wanted to provide a little bit of context about who we are. So Kathy and I are both behavioral health directors at Western Connecticut Coalition, and we are what's called the Regional Behavioral Health Action Organization, or RBHAO, for DEMAS Region 5. And just a reminder for those not familiar with the regions, that means we support Greater Danbury, Greater Torrington, and then Greater Waterbury areas. And so that totals to 43 towns, as well as 25 local prevention councils, or we call them LPCs. They are wonderful grassroots groups created by community members, youth, parents, kind of all those different sectors who really care about, the health and well-being of their communities, keeping young people substance-free, promoting mental health, and all of the good stuff that falls under behavioral health. We have a couple of our LPC representatives here today, so it's so nice to see you all. And so really, yes, we cover everything that falls under the behavioral health umbrella. So mental health promotion, suicide prevention, of course, problem gambling awareness and prevention, positive youth development, Narcan training. We try and do it all at least. So that's just a little bit about us. And one of the projects that Kathy and I are tasked with is the problem gambling awareness team. And she's going to provide a little bit more detail about that to kind of close out today's conversation. But we just wanted all of you to know kind of who we are and why we're here. And so we have today's presenters, so some familiar faces, or at least familiar voices for some of you. I do want to just take a moment, and my computer is freezing up on me as I pull up their bio. So if you don't mind just giving me one moment. Sorry about that. There we go. So first we have Stephen Matos. He is a person in long-term recovery of over 35 years from gambling, alcohol, and as a person affected from problem gambling. Stephen has a very lengthy bio that after I'm done speaking, I'm going to throw in the chat for you all. Same with Earl and Liz. Next up, we have Earl Sanford. He is currently serving as the manager of problem gambling with the Better Choice Program Gambling Services with MCCA in Waterbury, Danbury, and Torrington. So Earl's got the same coverage area we do. And I'll put his full bio for your review in the chat as well. And last, we have Elizabeth Liz Genovese. She has been a licensed clinician since 2014, specializing in addiction and over the past 3 years in gambling, addiction, and recovery specifically. So as we get started, I am going to upload a document that has the full bios for all of our wonderful speakers, so that you can kind of browse those, because they're really quite impressive. And if we talked about all of their achievements, we wouldn't have time for their presentation. And so today's learning objectives, and you'll recognize these hopefully from the flyer, but by the end of this webinar, hopefully you all will have reviewed how to reach out for problem gambling help here in Connecticut, listed the variety of treatment options available in our region, examined the ways that problem gambling affects families and loved ones, and named the supports available for those affected by another person's gambling. That's definitely one of the areas we're highlighting today with our wonderful speakers. So hopefully we will achieve all of those learning objectives, and you will be able to provide feedback on these objectives in our very quick evaluation at the end. So before we dive into content, we kind of just wanted to get a temperature check, a read of the room. So we do have a poll, and Kathy's going to pull that up for me. And the question is, how aware are you of the problem gambling supports and services in Region 5? And this is an anonymous poll, so feel free to be honest if you're not quite aware. There is nothing wrong with that. That's why we're all here. So I'll give you just a couple seconds there. Give it just a couple more seconds, waiting on a couple people share their input. All right, Kathy, if you want to share the results with everybody just so they can see. So it looks like we have a good chunk of people who are very aware, some who are somewhat aware, some not sure, and some not aware. So it looks like we all have something that we can probably learn. Even those who are very aware, hopefully our presenters will be able to cover something new, so that you can walk away with some new information. That is the goal. And so I'm going to turn it over to our speakers to really dive into our first piece of content, which is how to seek help. So I'll turn it over.
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Kathy and Abby and Western Connecticut Coalition for hosting us today. Yeah, so that little poll was very telling, because I can remember when I first started working in this field, as working with PGS, and we'd be in a live training room, and we'd ask everybody, about who was aware if there was any, who was aware of gambling treatment in Connecticut, and very few people would raise their hand. So, we have 42% very aware, and 42% somewhat aware. So that's really good. So it's starting to show that things are changing. So, so as far as getting help in Connecticut, one of the main ways people can find help in Connecticut is through the Connecticut Council on Problem Gambling's 24/7 helpline, and it's a really great service. And it's not just for folks with seeking help for gambling. It's also for family members that are seeking help for their loved one, maybe, or seeking their own help, experiencing the challenges of their loved one's gambling. So it's a great resource. And again, it's manned 24/7. Great staff over at the Connecticut Council oversee that. And it's specifically in Region 5. MCCA is the provider, and the way to get a hold of our team is on the website there, and the phone number listed there. Anything else, Earl or Liz, on that?
No, the phone number comes directly to me, and I would make referrals from that.
Thank you. Yes, and then when someone does call that, the 24/7 helpline, they'll get information, whatever kind of help they're seeking. If they want formal treatment, they'll be directed to the Better Choice program in the region that they're calling from, or maybe they just want some recovery resources or information sent to them, or some type of recovery support, and they'll be directed to that.
And I would just say, Stephen, when Earl gets the call, he will, whether it's him or me or another person on the are on our team would hopefully reach out after you might have to work with the client to maybe get them set up for an intake and see if they'd like to engage for treatment. And hopefully that turnaround is usually pretty quick.
Yeah, thank you for that, Liz. Yeah, really important. So the turnaround on our services, like if someone does call the helpline and it comes to us, we're usually calling that person the same day and trying to, as long as they're available, we're able to see them within 24 to 48 hours, their schedule permitting. So. Okay, next slide. And here's just the overview of our services at the Better Choice program at MCCA. So we offer a wide variety of services for outpatient treatment in Region 5. Inpatient treatment is available for folks with a gambling disorder. And I just want to say the inpatient treatment is available to all the regions in Connecticut. All the Better Choice programs are that inpatient option is available to all of them. It's grant funded. It's a 7 to 10 day respite. Someone can get, they're in with the substance use population, but they do get gambling specific treatment. Our staff, peer counselors and therapists will meet with them while they're there. And again, we're in Waterbury, Danbury, Torrington, and New Milford. And we have individual and counseling, family therapy, group treatment, we have 3 peers on staff, counting myself, med management and financial counseling and a whole bunch more. All our staff, as you can see, we're all, 3 of us on here are all ICGC3s, and our other 2 staff, actually our other staff that's not on, Bob is also ICGC, and our peers are working towards those gambling certifications, our other 2 peers.
If
And
I could just,
we have a woman's, go ahead, Earl, go ahead, you want to say something, Earl?
no, I just want to backtrack just quickly. The reason we try to get back to people so quickly is because people almost unanimously call us in crisis. And therefore, the quick response within 24 to 36 hours is imperative to address people at that level of their concern and their crisis.
Thanks, Earl. Yeah, and again, our current groups are a women's gambling support group, which is really important because, sometimes in the Gamblers Anonymous world, it's predominantly men. So we do offer a women's specific gambling support group. Really important. Our female peer, Janice, she co-facilitates that with Liz. We have a family support group that Liz and I co-facilitate, and another co-ed support group. And more recently, this past year, we started a long-term recovery support group for people that have been around in our program for a number of years, kind of different problems and life challenges they're experiencing today rather than they were in early recovery. So Earl kind of got that up and running a few months ago. So it's a great group, and we meet once a month with that group. And again, no cost treatment options. So certainly for the, as I mentioned earlier, the inpatient treatment for gambling is grant funded. Our treatment services, like the other Better Choice programs in the state, there's no out-of-pocket expense. So whatever your insurance pays, there's the grant covers the co-pays. Or if someone doesn't have insurance for whatever reason, their treatment is covered by our Better Choice grant.
And just in terms of inpatient treatment at McDonough House in Danbury, as Stephen mentioned, it's more of a respite. It's taking a person out of a very destructive gambling environment, be it a home situation, whatever it is. And it's quite intensive. It's 6 groups a day. We also have our peers visit a client in Danbury. We also have a counselor in Danbury, gambling specific counselor, who will meet with that client while that client is in inpatient treatment as well. So it's pretty intensive.
And there's a question from Paul. Paul, it's 7 to 10 days on average.
Looks like Stacy might have a question or a comment as well. Yeah, she's got her hand up.
Thank you. Stephen, how often do your clinicians work with the community? If you've got a family in crisis, maybe you need childcare or help with finances, with food resources and things like that. Is it pretty easy to connect with our communities, and what gaps do you see there?
So usually, we do financial counseling. We as far as give them options on some of the things that they might be able to do with as far as, when they're struggling with gambling. As far as resources in the community, Liz is really good at that, at finding resources for folks, if they need outside support, things like that. So Liz usually handles that. She's really good. Liz, you can speak on that if you like to.
So one thing, with Husky clients, it's a little bit easier. There's some available resources with private clients. And I saw Paul has another question too. Just trying to connect them through 211 or just seeing what other resources might be available. But helping with finances, we have, we can refer them if they want to consolidate debt through like Money Management Inc. As far as, like you said, daycare or, childcare, things like that, that's something that there might be kind of a little bit of a gap with, because we would have to refer them probably to 211 or somewhere to have them have resources available, because it's not like something we offer on site or anything like that. So that is somewhere maybe, working a little bit more with some of the community things. We actually haven't had much of that come up. For our gambling clients, it's a little bit different than with our substance abuse clients. So it is something that kind of put on our radar though. But it's been a little bit different. So if you're noticing anything, it's not something that we've specifically seen, but it's something to kind of keep in mind for our gambling clients.
Thank you, Liz. Good job. And we have experienced, we have worked with clients who have experienced homelessness. Again, calling 211 and finding resources for them to kind of get a bed and shelter. So over the years, we've had a few clients with that and been able to help them. Okay, next slide.
So we have our video here, Stephen.
Okay.
Do you want to do an intro and then I'll play it?
Yeah. So yeah, sure. Thanks, Kathy. So here's a video, and it can be accessed actually on the Problem Gambling Services website. There are 6 videos on the state of Connecticut Problem Gambling Services website, and this is one of them. It's called Mark and Maggie. These are folks that have gone through the Better Choice program. These videos were done a few years ago, but even though they were done, they were a while ago, they're still pertinent today. Folks that have come to our program, to the Better Choice programs for help. So these people have gone through the Better Choice, and they're willing to make these little videos of their experiences as far as getting help. So this is a couple that kind of got some help through the Better Choice. So it's a good little story. Would you like to share it now?
My name is Mark, and this is my partner, Maggie. And I started gambling way back in the days of high school. My first gambling adventure was at the horses with my father, and then it escalated into me doing horses and lottery numbers when that came in, sports betting, casinos when they started coming into Connecticut, even before. I kept trying to get even, if you will, and it got worse and worse and worse, and I finally said, boy, enough is enough. These numbers are way too big. And I started having to either get another credit card or look for extensions on the maximum. And finally I said, I can't do this. And said, I have to share this with her.
I really did not suspect the gambling at all, because he covered it up. The amount of money that I wasn't seeing eventually would have caught up with him. And I don't see how he could have hidden it for as long as he did. When Mark finally told me about his gambling, and he was so upset, it was difficult for him to tell me, and he was so sorry before he even told me anything. The way he was acting, I was really frightened, because I thought he was going to tell me that he had a girlfriend. And I never expected a problem to be gambling.
I think getting it off your chest too helps tremendously. Telling other people about my situation, that was probably the hardest thing that I've had to do. Over this past year, with my relationship with Maggie has improved, I believe. We communicate a lot more, it's not as many hidden things. Since I started treatment, I've gotten a lot out of it. A sense of family here because we're all in the same boat. And also I've learned not to feel sorry for myself. I oftentimes did that. It was somebody else's fault, or all the other pressures of the world banged on me and made me gamble. And I realized that it's me that did it and no one else. And, quit feeling sorry for yourself and do something about it.
And know that there is help for them. If they're serious about it, if they have loved ones who care for them. I'm very happy that Mark is doing what he does. It's very helpful.
So that's a great video one of the main reasons why I wanted to show that. Please put comments in there because I'm sure it'll generate some interest. But one of the main things why I wanted to put that video in there is it really speaks to the hidden nature of the gambling addiction. Maggie talked about how Mark was gambling all those years and she had no clue, and she was afraid that when he was going to talk to her that he had another girlfriend, and so it wasn't even on her radar screen. And that story, we probably heard a couple of times over the years, that where the person thought they had a girlfriend. So that was really eye-opening. I can remember hearing that for the first time. And then Mark also talked about the difficulty he had to tell her, the shame and the guilt, kind of speaks to the shame and the guilt he felt sharing it with his loved one. And again, I think that was, just speaks, this speaks to the hidden nature of the gambling disorder. I thought that was really eye-opening. They had been together for a long time, and even to the extent of his gambling, she really didn't know. So yeah. So
Stephen, I would just like to add to that.
Yeah.
Again, as I said earlier, when people reach out to us, they're in a state of crisis. And in many cases, the family, be it a spouse or the rest of the family, they're just learning of all the financial devastation that has occurred. So when people are in a state of crisis, it's very difficult to sort things out. So a very direct approach is often needed in that case. In other words, helping them to take immediate steps, to sort out immediate needs, take action steps. But that state of crisis is very present right from the beginning. And I just wanted to, the name of this training is Help and Hope. We try to instill as much as possible hope right from the beginning. That's a very important word because people really get down, feel very hopeless and helpless about what's going to happen, especially people who are affected by a loved one's gambling. At times they just feel, I don't know what I'm going to do. I've lost all hope. I've lost all trust. So hope for us is a very important word to keep alive.
Yeah, thank you, Earl, and I'm glad you mentioned that. And before I talk about this next slide, I just want to talk a little bit about that hope, because we do our weekly family group virtual, and we're able to engage family members all around the state. And so we had a new member on Monday night, and so it's a good sized group. There's probably 10 people in the group, and so, usually when we have a new member, we have the other members who have been around a while kind of talk about their experiences, especially if they have similar situations, if they have like a young son that's, experiencing problems. And so one of the members who was sharing his story, he said that, when he first came in, he didn't believe in any of this. He wasn't buying, he was like, he didn't think this family group therapy was Liz was there. So, it was a bunch of BS, and here he is 2 years later. He goes, he's sharing with a new person. I'm totally bought into this process, and helping our loved ones. So it was really, it talked about hope, because he said he felt hopeless, and then here he is 2 years later. How he bought into the process of the family support, and seeing how much better that his son was doing with the help and support of him and his wife. So it was really amazing moment. And then they can do it better than we can, even sharing it with another group member, sharing that experience. So it was a pretty amazing moment there in group the other night. So Liz, any comments on that or?
Yes, so the part for the family members is, they will say, even if my loved one's not in treatment, I'll still keep coming, because they recognize, we talk about self-care and how they need to take care of themselves, that they need to show their loved one that they're still in it to support them. And that's one way that they can do it, is still go to the meetings and show up and learn and educate themselves and educate others, and show their loved ones that, whatever, if you're doing better or not, we're still working like our program to support you, and educate ourselves on ways that we can help you get through this, because it's an ongoing recovery. I did want to backtrack. I did want to backtrack on one more thing. I was thinking the question about, we do have a case manager back on staff in Waterbury. We did have one that was primarily out of Danbury. So we have one that I think started probably like a month and a half ago in Waterbury. So normally I would have people engage with them as well. And the case manager can help find resources for people for something like you were talking earlier, like daycare and other things like that. On the financial side, we talk about how people can manage looking at the finances and the budgeting. So that's another thing. And I know I saw two things from Paul. One was, and Steve, you had mentioned the gambling grant. So when we have inpatient, insurance doesn't cover a lot of the inpatient for gambling at this time versus mental health and substance use. So the grant will cover those days, as Earl had said, or Steve, at like 7 to 10 days. The other part, and Paul had mentioned, the video shows the person had been gambling, and they're older gentlemen for years before it's a problem. A lot of the newer kids, as we talked about with the family member, the younger 18, 19, 20-year-old kids are coming in. And so we're seeing the impact of gambling much quicker with them. The other part is they're actually going to their parents saying, I have a problem, which is very different and much sooner, in the process of their gambling. They may have lost money. They recognize it's impacted their mood or their social life, but they are actually going to their parents, which I think for us is very new nowadays with the online gaming, gambling, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, all that. So thank you, Paul, for those questions. And I had wanted to get back to the other person on just some of the other things that we have available that we can avail ourselves to, but we do have another support person that we can use to tie all that in with the community resources.
And if I could just pick up, sorry, Stephen, if I could just pick up on the parents, it's very difficult for parents because a young person comes forward and is in crisis. And as parents, we love our children, and oftentimes we want to do the best for them and keep homeostasis in the family, keep the balance. And so parents, will sometimes bail their young person out, or do everything they can to get rid of the debt. And also parents can blame themselves. What did I do wrong? Where did this go awry to create this problem? So we have to work very carefully with parents on that issue. The other thing I just quickly wanted to point out is I've often referred to it as kind of almost like grief. When a loved one hears when a loved one hears that his or her spouse has been gambling, it's like a loss of trust. And it's with all the associated feelings, depression, anxiety, a lot of suicide thoughts or intents. And so right up front, that becomes very, very important.
Thank you, Earl. And I just wanted to touch on Nicole's question, why is success rate so much higher when it comes to gambling than other addictions? I can't speak to what the success rate is on other addictions, but I know there was in the video, it talked about people that come for gambling treatment, over 75% do relatively well over time. So that's over time, there could be even though they're doing well over time, there could be reoccurrences in there, they may experience reoccurrences, but I think, in my own opinion, I think one of the things with gambling treatments, I guess in Connecticut is it's open-ended. Like a lot of substance use programs, people, complete IOP, maybe 12 weeks, maybe, and then relapse prevention, and they're on their way. The beauty of the Better Choice program is it's open-ended. People can attend our program as long as they want. I mean, we have, I think our longest client is 18 years, and we have some other ones that like 10 years, 12 years, 6 years. I mean, there's a lot of long-term people in our Better Choice program, and I believe there are in some of the other Better Choice programs. So it is open-ended. So it's not like they're complete. They can come as long as they want, and it's kind of like it's not a cookie cutter treatment. Maybe they just want to see Earl or Liz. Maybe they see Earl or Liz once every 3 months, and they seek peer support, weekly or bi-weekly. Maybe they come to group every week and just see a peer counselor or a therapist, in between once or twice. So it's kind of mix and match, but again, it is open-ended. And again, that's I think that could speak to that statistic. I'm thinking, so if that helps.
Excuse me, I'm imagining in my mind, and tell me if this is ignorance, that when you're in recovery from gambling, that the rewards of being in recovery are probably a little more hopeful and positive than the reward, than what you go through when you're in recovery for other things like substance use and things. I'm imagining like that weight off your shoulders, that you're getting help, that your bills are, your family's going to be getting help and things like that. You don't have the physical withdrawals maybe, or maybe you do. I'm just imagining that the recovery is a tiny bit more positive and rewarding than other kinds of recovery. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, I'm in recovery from both, so maybe I can speak to a little bit of that. Certainly, when I stopped, drinking and using substances, I mean, it was great. It was, the reward, feeling better, making it to work on time, having, being more engaged, in other activities in my life, so many good things, and gambling too. So first of all, one of the things, with gambling, people see that, yes, there is a period of withdrawal. People can go through that with gambling, if they're gambling, regularly or on a regular basis, they stop suddenly, they can experience that period of withdrawal. I experienced it myself. It could be anxiety, depression, sleeplessness, a lot of different things. So people can't go through that. So, and that's almost like, McDonough House too, when people go in gambling treatment, it's kind of like that respite from gambling where they could be going through that, and it may not be over in 8 days. It may take some people longer, over a period of time. It takes a while for the brain to reset, but that initial period of stopping gambling can be very challenging. So, and as far as rewards, one of the things I always say, just in my recovery, everything I tried to get by gambling, I now have today by not gambling. So that's something not just material things, but, my self-respect, my family, and, so my great career, so many things as a result of not gambling. So I kind of look at it that way. So great question though.
Yeah, we're loving all the questions. If you want to throw them in the chat, I want to make sure we have time to get through all the content. Sure. So feel free to throw them in the chat. And then when we have a couple natural pauses, Stephen, Earl, and Liz, Kathy and I will keep an eye on the chat for you. Just want to make sure we get through everything. But please keep throwing things in the chat. We love that. Good questions.
And so, Earl, did you have something to say, Earl?
I think that's an excellent question that Stacy asked. It's just kind of the opposite of what I said. I've regained trust. I'm now living life on life's terms. I'm saving money for the first time in 20 years. I have a better relationship with my children and my extended family. I have a great job. I mean, and I'm keeping it. But again, not to belabor this, always be vigilant. Always be aware that there could be a trigger that could create a recurrence. But the rewards are very definite, very tangible. Stacy, excellent question.
Thank you. And so this slide here, inspiration just ahead. So usually I bring in a speaker. I have a couple of speakers I like to use. They weren't available today. And actually some of this content Fred and I did like 3 years ago in this training. And I was actually the speaker in this part of the training, but I'm not going to A lot of you know me. I'm not going to get into my story. I'll give like just a couple of snippets, because part of my story is being a person affected and growing up with gambling. So I'll just speak to a couple minutes about that, kind of what it was like, and the impact it can have on the family, and how important this part of my recovery was for me also, seeking my own help, as a person affected also. So just kind of quickly, in my story, I grew up with gambling. My dad was a gambler. That's basically what he did for his job. He was a bookmaker, hustler, card shark, anything gambling related. There weren't casinos, around. The only casinos back then were in like Atlantic City and Las Vegas, I guess, in the United States. But a lot of the gambling went on in gambling, in social clubs, gambling halls, bookie joints, things like that, card games. Growing up, there was a lot of financial instability in the home. We moved around a lot. I'm guessing because, maybe the rent wasn't paid or the mortgage wasn't paid, the bills weren't paid. So again, a lot of financial instability in the home. It was very stressful for my mom and my I had a younger sister. And so, gambling took a toll on the family in many different ways. There was a lot of arguing in the home, my young sister and I being exposed to that, was very difficult. Just a lot of family stuff, like some domestic violence. And again, just all the turmoil that went, with my father's lifestyle and gambling. It was, and so, it did cause my mom to divorce my dad when we were, my sister and I were teenagers. And so, fast forward kind of, when I graduated high school, it started working. One of the places, it had a good job. One of the things that, if a gambler is experiencing financial challenges, the first place they'll go for money or a bailout is to a family member. So I would, I was that person with my father. So he was experiencing some challenges, maybe losing large bets or whatever was going on. And, how could I say no to my dad, and I would take out loans at these loan shops or whatever, take out loans for him or loan him money out of my paycheck. And, with the intention that, I'm sure his intention was to pay me back in a timely manner, which, one thing with persons that gamble, oftentimes that doesn't take place. There's other things get in the way, and, money isn't for paying bills. Money is for, gambling. It's needed for gambling and more gambling. So there's, I experienced a lot of problems in my own life, because of my father's gambling. I was allowing my father's gambling to impact my life, taking out loans. It was impacting. I was, 19, 20 years old. I was living on my own with my girlfriend. I didn't even have money to pay my own rent. It was affecting my relationship with my girlfriend. And so it was, again, it was a lot of anger and resentment on my part, Earl talked about the trust, the broken trust and all that. I experienced a lot of the things that we talked about on here today, or we'll talk about. I experienced a lot of those things. So, and the other part of that was also, we talk about risk factors for gambling. So one of the risk factors is having a parent that gambles. So it was one of those things, if I couldn't beat him, join him. So actually I wound up, my father got me involved in gambling, at, 21 years old. And so I went on to experience my own challenges for gambling for a few years till I was able to, stop and get help. But just quickly, so when I did seek, I was able to stop drinking, and I was drinking through this period of time also. But when I stopped drinking at the age of 29, I was still gambling for a number of months until I went to a friend of mine in AA took me to Gamblers Anonymous, and that I was able to stop gambling. But a funny thing happened when I went to Gamblers Anonymous. I was so impacted by my dad's gambling. It had affected me so much. When I went to the Gamblers Anonymous room, it was sharing a little bit about my story. They said, I think you belong in the other room, the Gam-Anon room. So it was like, I didn't know where I belonged in the beginning. So, I mean, gambling really had an effect on me. It created a lot of anger, resentment, broken trust. Plus, I was dealing with my own challenges with gambling. So it was really, it was really difficult time. But again, I can't speak as a person affected and do know those challenges. And so, going on throughout the years and by many years of recovery, probably the hardest and part of my recovery going forward. I always say it was easy to stop gambling. It was easy to stop drinking and using substances. It really was. By the grace of God, it was like I stopped and that was it. But the hardest part of my recovery was, dealing with all that stuff that I kind of grew up with and experienced with my dad, that broken trust and anger and resentment, and finally being all right with it all. And it took a lot of years. And that's why I'm really passionate about working with persons affected and impacted by gambling. So it's all good now. And I'm at a point where, it was a lot of hard work, but I'm at a point now where I'm grateful for it all, really, because I'm able to do this today. So that's just kind of the short version of that. But I just want to stress the importance of, family members seeking their own help, whether their loved one gets help or not. It's really important for them to, get their own relief from this. So that's all I have with that.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. I think personal stories are so important when it comes to all of these issues, and we really do appreciate you being brave enough to share all of that with us.
Thank you.
As we move on into the next section of the presentation this afternoon, we just wanted to kind of engage with everyone with a quick question. But before we do that, I think we may take an opportunity, because I know that my screen's been lighting up with questions in the chat. So I'm going to try to see if I can field a couple of these for us before we move forward. Keeping in mind, gambling is a delivery mechanism for a high affecting the brain. Okay, so that's a statement coming from Paul. Affecting the brain and nervous system the same as substances. Yes, thank you for that comment. A question from Deborah: has the new gambling laws in Connecticut influenced gambling treatment admissions? Are you able to answer that, you folks from MCCA?
Sure. I mean, I know we're very busy. Our census is way up. We've gotten a lot more young people as a result of some of the online gambling. I do know that CCPG might be on here. They could probably speak to the statistics on that. I know that, I don't know what the statistics are, but I know their helpline calls have increased since the rollout of online gambling.
Yeah, and since sports gambling became legalized in late 2022, our census has increased, particularly with younger men between the ages of 20 and 31, 20 to 34. Our census has increased.
Thank you.
So Mallory, Val could speak more to CCPG helpline, but she has, there has been an increase with that. The other thing too is, there is a voluntary self-exclusion. I just want, since that kind of pertains to that question, there isn't a self-exclusion for the online gambling. And I know as of like 3 months ago, there were already 1,700 people enrolled in the self-exclusion for the online gambling. So it's probably more than that now, but that's a pretty significant number since the rollout in October of 2021. So.
And also with the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. So we had one, we have one for sure that came in for the cryptocurrency Bitcoin, but other people have said that they do that, but that's not their primary presentation for gambling. And it is some of the older folks, but really the younger folks now coming in with the online gambling and gaming is really over the past year and a half increased tremendously. The demographics have changed quite a bit.
Thank you, Liz. I did a quick scan of the chat. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody's questions, but if I did, we will certainly have more time for Q&A at the end, but I'm going to move us forward. And if everyone could just use the chat to answer this question: how many people are affected by another person's gambling? What do you folks think? And then we're going to talk a little bit more about that in depth. I see we've got some numbers coming into the chat. 10, 1 to 6, 4 to 8, 11, 4 to 7. Okay. Thank you all for your contributions to the conversation. 20, 15, entire families, everyone, hard to measure. Okay. Very thoughtful responses. Thank you. So I'm going to turn it back over to Stephen.
So yeah, great responses. So everybody was up there with some significant numbers, and here you have it. On average, one individual working through a gambling addiction impacts an additional 7 to 20 people in their families and communities. So it could be, certainly families in the workplace, everywhere. So you folks were absolutely right on. So you guys are learning. So any questions related to that. And again, I'm sure we can all speak to this, my team here. So here are some of the impacts, greater financial problems. We talked about relationship challenges. Earl talked about that lack of trust. Isolation, gambling could be alone, very lonely, isolating, when the person is working, through that gambling, or the family member experiencing, not knowing what to do or who to seek out for help when their loved one is experiencing gambling. Burnout.
Yes, I'm sorry, Stephen.
You could jump in. Yeah, go ahead.
I would just add to that, two concerns. As a therapist, when a new client comes into my office, the two most important concerns immediately for me are what is the extent of the financial damage, and what is the potential for suicidal thoughts or suicidal intentions, and to provide education around both of those issues, like what are the signs of suicide ideation? What do you do in case that is present? To educate a family regarding that. And then to talk about gambling education in terms of, someone mentioned brain chemistry, dopamine increase and things of that nature, which we try to educate people to as quickly as possible.
Thank
And,
you, Earl.
and
And
I
again,
just wanted to
Oh,
comment
go
too,
ahead, Liz.
Steve, if I can. So one of the questions earlier was, how is it different from substance use and all that? So one of the things with the financial, right, we do want to offer hope and options for them to, look at the finances and figure out how they can pay them back. The hard part is when there is a lot of debt or money that was taken, paying that, like coming up with a payment plan, where with someone with substance use, once they're have stopped, they still might have some stuff to clean up, but it might not be as long term. I know people have talked about, someone sends $5 a month to a creditor, and that could be going on for years, right? The financial impact of how you pay back debt, and just the reminder every month, which can be good for recovery, can also be stressful for the gambler and their family member, but also can lead to hope of, like, okay, in so a certain amount of time we could pay this down, to give them that hope. And it can go, a little bit of both ways. That's one of the long-term consequences. Now what we're finding with the online gambling, a lot of the taxes, people can have tax stuff that's new that we're still trying to figure out, that can be exorbitant. Versus like casino wins and other ones, they still might have debt, but the taxes are becoming an issue for some of our online gamblers too, that we haven't quite been able to kind of open up.
Particularly with IRS.
Yes, and Connecticut versus even the federal. So that's one that's kind of we're kind of trying to learn more about. So that's one of the things that keeps going on and on for people as well. That can be very different from substance use. Depends on what they experience. If they had a DUI and other things like that, that's very different. So I just wanted to clarify that a little bit too. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. And at the bottom there was just some links for some treatment for some resources for family support there.
Thank you for pointing that out, Stephen. I think we may have failed to tell the folks in the room that we will be sharing this slide deck, so you'll have access to all the information and links that are included here.
Okay. And here's kind of what we're talking about, protecting finances. So before one of the things, I'm going to go through all these, but protecting finances is a huge burden for persons affected, family members of gamblers, because in many cases, the person that, with the gambling experiencing the gambling challenges have managed the money, have had all the financial oversight. The loved one never really had a part in taking care of the finances, where all of a sudden now this whole responsibility is dumped on them because their loved one can't have access, or have whether not access to money or limited access to money, or some kind of financial strategy that makes them accountable. So it could be really a daunting task along with all the other issues that the family member might be going through of their loved one's gambling. Then all of a sudden this responsibility is thrust upon them. So it can be very challenging, and we see that a lot. But again, we'll talk. I'll give Earl and Liz a chance to talk about that in a minute too. I'm sure they want to comment on it. But again, closing joint accounts, removing names from the account, arrange to have no new charges allowed, have credit cards in the person affected name only, and again, closing joint accounts, transferring money, putting the house maybe in the person's affected name, and just a lot of different strategies. There's so many different strategies that we have to come up with. Earl, Liz, and I, we call it, sealing up all the cracks. Because one thing with, a person with gambling disorder, they're very creative in finding ways to get money and loopholes and cracks to get that. So we work really, really hard on, protecting the finances. And again, you have to have buy-in from both parties. It's sometimes very difficult. These are difficult conversations to have, but again, in the long run, when we're able to get them to do these things, it can have better treatment outcomes over time. At Earl, Liz.
Yeah. If I could just speak a few minutes about an approach to family work in terms of family systems. If you think of the family as a system, you think of a plumbing system. If something goes wrong with your plumbing, it's not just what happens, but it affects the whole system. And I remember the family therapist, Karen Horney, she showed a child's mobile, and she hung it very, very carefully. And if you touch very, very slightly one part of that mobile, the whole mobile moves. It changes. And that's kind of like a family system. If something's wrong in the system, the whole system is going to be affected. And that happens with, particularly with gambling. And so I try to approach it in terms of a system, in terms of, like, I would call a first order change. And what that means, a first order change, is when something happens according to the current rules of the system. For example, if parents will do anything to protect their children. And so, as I mentioned before, if suddenly a young person gets into gambling problems, the parents, either out of guilt or wanting to fix the situation, will pay off the debt, and that keeps the homeostasis. It keeps it, but it doesn't get to the root problem of the system. And then I move into what is called second order change, where the parents may require a budget, a debt repayment plan, which we try, as Stephen said, try to close all the doors, seal all the cracks, change the rules of the system in order to get to the root problem, which requires accountability, responsibility for the consequences caused by the gambling. So it's a long way of saying the first order change, second order change. We really try to focus on second order change in helping the system to become more healthy.
Thank you, Earl.
And I just had two more things really is, people get creative of where they're going to get money from. So a part of sealing up the cracks is if the gambler has access to, if they're, some people have jobs where they might have access to money at a club or managing an older adult family member's money. So kind of, if you hear any of these, like in sessions, and you realize that someone might have a problem with gambling, but they have access to someone else's money, that can be an issue as well, that we want to kind of see how we can lock that down to, to make sure they're not doing something that's crossing the line. And also, just sealing up those cracks. They might have access to borrowing money from others, coming up with, they can come up with a million excuses of why they need money. So kind of listening of, where they're trying to get money from, or what things might happen to them that could put them in further trouble, and further, financial problems. So that's another thing too, that there's just a lot of different pieces that when you get in there, you start to be aware of, like, oh, okay, there's a lot of different ways they can get access to money and, harm themselves in a sense.
Thank you, Liz. Okay, and again, here's some other things that we use, protecting the finances. Some of the gambler may have a private post office box. Person affected may discuss with the gambler a plan to get the mail first. Actually, there's a thing at the post office where you can, I think Fred shared it one time. When your mail's scanned before delivery, you can know what you're going to get in your mail. I'm not well versed on that, but I know they do have something like that. And again, there's a prepaid Visa. There's a really great tool called the TrueLink card, where it's like a credit card where the family members, the administrator of the card, they have an app on their computer or lap or whatever they have, and they can approve or deny any expenditures. They can't get cash advance on it. They can monitor all expenditures. So it's a great tool, small monthly fee for the card. Again, creating a budget, debt consolidation. So there's a lot of companies out there that maybe aren't so reputable, but one of the ones that the state has always recommended is Money Management International. We've had several clients over the years use that, and it's kind of it's not a loan or anything like that. They consolidate the debt, and someone had a question about finances and creating a budget or some kind of plan, create hope. So certainly having an end game is huge. So coming up with a plan, you have a goal to shoot for. I mean, we have a client in group every week. He talks about how he has a plan. He's sticking to the plan every week and where he's at. And so he's like 2 years into his 4-year plan, and he's really, every week he's a little closer to it. So having that, giving him that hope. So that was a great question. Yes, it does provide hope for some of those individuals. And again, quick claim, if you have to transfer a property deed, financial oversight, transparent. Sometimes it's just, again, it's what these folks are willing to do. And so certainly the biggest piece of the puzzle is the financial oversight and transparency, knowing all what's going on about all the money. And again, working through that resistance, like we talked about, some folks are very resistant to that. And so, but the family members do have some leverage when it comes to that. So we kind of help them with that. So.
Okay, so we've been covering a lot of content. So Kathy and I were hoping we could all just kind of pause as a group here. And we invite you to take a moment and reflect on what we've covered so far. We still have a little bit more to go. But we encourage you to either share it in the chat or you can jot it down for yourself. But just a moment of reflection for what's one thing you've learned so far. What is one thing that you maybe found surprising? We do invite you to share your thoughts in the chat because that might help all of us learn. We're loving how much the chat is being used. I think it's great. So if you want to throw your thoughts in there, I also love in Zoom now that we can kind of react to each other's thoughts. So if someone has your kind of surprising or new item that you learned, feel free to react to that. But we kind of want to just hold space just a minute or so to kind of process what we're learning, because Stephen and Earl and Liz are really teaching us a lot. So hoping we can have a moment to reflect and then we'll keep going with content. Needed resources only. Yes. So in the past, only traditional supports, which have their limitations. So really those resources are evolving as the issue is evolving. That's a really good point, Michelle. Appreciating the resources, lots of great information. So feel free once again to just kind of throw that information, give yourself a minute to process what we're learning. We're throwing a lot at you. Some of you might not have had lunch yet. So we just kind of wanted to hold a little bit of space. So feel free to really throw that in the chat and interact with each other in there. Thanks, everybody. All right, take it away.
Okay, so we've talked about this a couple of times tonight, so I won't belabor it. But again, this FGCA's family group, it's been around for like probably 2 years, a little over 2 years now. So the great thing about that is, like, we are, at this time we are the only family support group in the Better Choice program in the state. The other Better Choice programs do provide family support, individual counseling, so they do provide that. So we were able to get this group up and running a couple of years ago, and it's been a great resource. And again, seeing that we are the only one, we have people from all over the state. It's telehealth option. So, one of the silver linings to COVID was telehealth. So these people probably wouldn't be able to attend if we didn't have that. And they are committed to it. Compliance is great. And sometimes, folks don't want formalized treatment. So sometimes what we do is we just do an educational component, just giving them education on the nature of the gambling disorder, that it is a real thing, and just give them some resources on some financial interventions. And they don't want the counseling part. So whatever they're looking for, we will provide. And again, another thing we do at MCCA, we've had a few of them, the family night. So what we do is we have a family night with speakers. So what that looks like is, so certainly the persons in our persons affected group can't attend that. But what we really like to do is the folks that don't have family members in treatment, we urge them to attend and bring a loved one with them. So kind of almost make it mandatory that if they want to attend, they have to bring a loved one with them. So when they do that, and then we'll have a couple of speakers that have gone through, family members that have gone through our program and talk about their own stories of recovery and their challenges they face. Very, very powerful. And besides the Better Choice, some of them have attended Gam-Anon also, which is another great resource that some of our clients use also. So they bring both of those resources to the table when they do speak at family night. And some of you probably heard Sue at our kickoff event and at other events. So she's a wonderful resource for us. There's other folks too, but she speaks about her own recovery, speaks about Gam-Anon, she speaks about the gambling addiction. She's well versed. So our clients sometimes are our best resources, really. And part of that, and I'll talk about how they get to that point a little later on in the slide presentation. So.
Yeah, in fact, our clients are, in a sense, some of our best referral sources too. And this is one of the things that we try to focus on in the family night, because if we can encourage family members to come, they realize, listening to the presentations, that that this is a very serious problem, and they need to look deeper and find more supports to help with their family situation. So that's why family nights have become very important for us.
Thanks, Earl. And again, additional treatment considerations, as I just talked about, educating persons affected on a gambling disorder, they're like substance use disorders. We talked about the hidden nature, exploring other activities, try to give them alternative things to do besides gambling and other things to do in their life. And oftentimes when the person stops gambling and the loved ones engage in treatment, they have more, more money, they're able to do more things in their life, and we give them options. Sometimes we have our own events at Better Choice where we're funded, where we can, if we want to get tickets for a ball game or other different types of events, we can actually fund certain activities, for our clients. And again, treatment here's again, this is the type of treatment: individual, family therapy, and working on repairing those relationships and building trust. So,
and I would just, like Planet Fitness, we try to be a judgment-free zone. We really try to avoid any kind of judgment. But at the same time, I was going to bring this up before, and we try to make family members and persons affected very aware of this, because they're often people who really suffer very profoundly. We call it hidden tricks of the trade. Stephen and referred to this, but for example, referring to a friend that doesn't exist, using a credit card, another credit card that a partner or loved ones don't even know about, getting to the mailbox before the mail arrives. I mean, there are endless kind of manipulative activities that people go through to defend themselves against people finding out.
Thanks, Earl. And again, just more additional treatment considerations. We urge attendance at Gam-Anon meetings for loved ones. There are in-person and Zoom options for that. Some of the things we already talked about, building assertive skills, and certainly CBT and MI are really helpful tools in working with these individuals.
And I did want to comment, we encourage the family members to work on their own self-care, because they might already have their own anxiety, depression, or even none, but just the anxiety and the stress that they feel, they need a way to manage that. They need a way to express that. So that's something we encourage a lot is, self-care in the meetings and what are you doing for yourself, or regrouping as a couple, because trying to get past the addiction and move forward as a couple or even as a family, things have to change, and really addressing those in the group and giving them, like you're saying, other pleasant activities. So again, it's like that caretaker that takes care of someone else, you have to take care of the caretaker. So they have to be mindful of that themselves.
Thanks, Liz. And again, next slide. And so here's some of you may know this slide, some of it. So up to 50% of individuals in treatment for gambling disorder have suicidal ideation, and about 17% have attempted suicide, and that's from the DSM-5. So just quickly, I mentioned Sue earlier, one of my speakers. She mentioned to me, so what about persons affected? What's their risk for suicide? She goes, I know people there. I've kind of experienced those feelings, and as a person affected, and she shares this. I'm not like telling on her. She shares this, and we did some little research, and we came up with this statistic that spouses of those who gambled have a suicide attempt rates 3 times higher than the general population. So it just goes to show how the family members are affected also. And so again, we do assess for these when folks do come into treatment, and they are assessed on the helpline call also. So next slide. And again, here's sources for referral and support. So lots of stuff here. Again, Problem Gambling Services. There's their website. It's a great website. The Mark and Maggie videos on there, fact sheets, treatment manuals. I can just go on, take a look at it. Tons of great stuff. Here's Gamblers Anonymous. Gamblers Anonymous has a strong presence in Connecticut. They have in-person and online meetings. So there's the link for that. And then Gam-Anon. There's a few Gam-Anons in the meetings in Connecticut. Some are online and some are in person. There's also there's a Gam-Anon GA meeting, a combined meeting that meets once a month also. Gambling Recovery Support Services is, I have a slide on that. I'll talk about it further down. CCAR, Connecticut Community for Addiction Recovery, another great program. They have all recovery meetings, recovery coach training. Advocacy Unlimited is another recovery organization, more holistic based, mindfulness, yoga, lots of alternative, therapies like that. Great organization. The National Council on Problem Gambling, there's their website, and the Connecticut Council on Problem Gambling. Yes, is our great partner in the work in Connecticut. They do the helpline, lots of trainings, a lot of our events. We just partner with them, so they're just phenomenal resource and team with us along with PGS. And next slide. Oh yeah, CCAR is in Waterbury Region 5 now. I saw that they opened up last month, so great to have them on board in our region. And again, more resources, the Better Choice programs. And these are all in there. So Kathy and Abby will send out these slides. I'm not going to, and the self-exclusion links are on there. You can actually self-exclude from the brick and mortar casinos. Again, with the online gambling, you can self-exclude from that. You can access the self-exclusion portal from the PGS website, PCPG website, and Department of Consumer Protection website. And that's just for the online gambling. It takes about 5 minutes to do that. And okay, next slide. And again, just in Connecticut, we have another grant, Statewide Recovery Support Services. I kind of oversee that. And so we're able to provide recovery opportunities for persons affected from gambling and the gambler, with recovery opportunities like scholarships for Recovery Coach Academy, Recovery Sports Specialist Training, and Speaker Bureau is a huge part of that. A lot of the folks that we have at our events that speak have gone through our Speakers Bureau training. I'm able to link people to Recovery Sports Services, outside of treatment. Training for behavioral health agencies. Many of you I've probably been to a lot of your agencies, and training with the recovery community, traveling around to the CCARs and mental health and substance use programs, providing training for the staff and the persons that go through those programs. And last but not least, this is our new resource van, and I can't wait to get it on the road as soon as it's on the road now, but the website's burning up on Responsible Play CT. If you want to book the van, and if it's available and we can staff it, we're trying to increase our staff. So this is a great resource. I'm On the other side, it has the door opens, it has an awning, it has its own table, chairs, big screen TV. We have all kinds of resources in there, surveys, swag, you name it. So you'll be seeing us around. We're doing the event at Western with Kathy and Abby, I think next month, and hopefully the wind doesn't blow us away. And anyway, so this is a great resource. Anybody wants to have one of their events or community events, go reach out to us or the CT Responsible Play, and hopefully we can make it.
Also, we hope to take this to fairs and parades and, sports events. So to let people know we're there.
That's it. It'll be everywhere. Thanks, Earl.
Very exciting. Thank you all so much for just a wealth of information this afternoon. We will have time for questions in a few minutes. I'm going to close things out for us as far as content and information goes, just by sharing a little bit of information about the Region 5 Problem Gambling Awareness Team. It is a function of our organization, Western Connecticut Coalition, and we have amazing partners, as you can see by the folks here, Stephen, Liz, and Earl, who are representing MCCA, our Better Choice provider, the Problem Gambling Services folks at DEMAS, and the Connecticut Council on Problem Gambling, among the youth serving organizations that we work with who do the Youth Gambling Project, Western Connecticut State University and our other colleges in the area, our local prevention councils. We are all working together in the region, in the 43 towns that we service, to raise awareness about problem gambling, make sure folks know about harm reduction, are just informed about what's happening, especially with the expansion of sports betting and legalized online gambling. And most importantly, that folks know that help is available, which we were so excited to be able to put today's presentation together with the help of our partners at MCCA to really highlight the support and treatment system that is available for folks. I'm hoping that you all learn something new today, but we also want you to visit our website. There's a link at the bottom of this page. This is just an example of some of the things that we've been doing. There's a flyer there that shows when we meet. We meet every other month. We did this flyer on the left about problem gambling awareness in Western Connecticut, just to kind of, raise some awareness, make sure folks know we're here, how to connect to resources. We had a March Madness campaign that's just finishing up on social media. We also had posters that were going up around the region. We also have some youth focus, with our youth serving organizations who did the Youth Gambling Awareness Project, and also with Powered Up, which is a focus on gaming, video gaming and gambling. We also have some people doing the Stack Deck program in our region. So we have a lot of things going on that we just wanted to share with everybody. And I also did include a slide here with specific links to the 3 youth serving organizations, those in Naugatuck, Wolcott, and New Milford, who participated in the Youth Gambling Awareness Project. There were 9 groups across the state who've been working since the fall to put together a PSA. And we have a great variety of things here. The Naugatuck group did an actual video, so the YouTube link is here. Wolcott CASA did an audio PSA, and our friends over at the New Milford Youth Agency did a podcast where they interviewed Stephen, one of our presenters today. I really encourage you all to check these out. It's amazing what the young people have put together across the state. Very exciting.
Oh, look, there's a loot box.
What kind of stuff do they offer?
I wish I had time to play all that, and I apologize, I accidentally hit play. But I hope you'll go back and play those and listen to those, because they're really great. So we're going to take a few moments to field any additional questions that we may have missed in the chat. So if anybody wants to unmute themselves, and then we just have a couple more things to bring us home, and evaluation. So if everyone could just kind of hang on for a few more minutes. It's 1:16, so we have, just under 15 minutes left. But I know there's been a lot of thoughtful discussion and questions today. So we'll pause here and allow folks to either drop more things into the chat, or you can feel free to unmute yourself.
Kathy and Abby, I just really want to thank you, you guys, and the Western Connecticut Coalition. You guys, since I've been working in Region 5, you guys have been awesome partners, really active in the field, on the gambling awareness team. It's a pleasure to work with you guys, and I really appreciate all your help and support with putting together this training today. And then it's always awesome working with you guys. You guys are just great. I really appreciate all your support.
Yes, I agree. Thank you.
Thanks to hear. Thank you all. We're just one big happy team over here. So let's see if we have anything in the chat that's popped up. We have a nice comment from Allison Fulton, our executive director. Thank you. We're looking to hire a problem gambling prevention coordinator. Please reach out to us if you're interested in that. Thank you, Allison, for popping that in the chat. But we are happy to answer any questions, or if anyone has any comments, and feel free to unmute yourself. Oh, and I see Emma's doing a little shameless plug here for the Recovery Friendly Workplace. Awesome. Thank you, Emma. If you're interested in learning more about that, you can click the link to that website, or you can contact her directly. Her email is ehollis, HOLLIS, at WCTcoalition.org.
And I did want to just backtrack. I know Paul put a comment a little earlier about, paying off debt for family members might pay that off. And Stephen had mentioned this earlier, and, can be considered a bailout. And, it can relieve the pressure for the gambler, but it also can open the door for them to maybe go ahead and think that they can gamble again. So that had come up. So when we're paying down debt or reconstructing or consolidating, it can kind of let the air out of the balloon a little bit. But then like Stephen will say, gambling, it's doing push-ups every day. You have to do something every day for your recovery, and being mindful that, again, when I was talking about someone paying a bill every month, it kind of reminds them, that can be a bad thing, but also good, because it keeps them engaged and really in recovery. For gamblers, they have to continue, anyone in recovery, right? What are you doing every day for your recovery? So there's a lot of things that when we do take steps with them, we have to also kind of hold up the back end of, what does this mean for you? Because this can make some other changes in your brain, because it takes a good while, almost a year, really, for the brain to kind of calm down from the gambling over time. And that early recovery can be a relief, and they think they got it, but it really is it's a long-term change in the brain that has to kind of reset itself.
And the way that happens is by clients doing different activities, avoiding triggers, avoiding people, places, and things, doing more pleasant activities. And we try to provide resources for that and encourage that. That's how the brain changes.
Very interesting. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? What are your questions?
I think we got them all during the training.
Yeah, no, that's good. I'm glad. I
A lot
hope
of
we
people,
didn't miss
a
anything
lot of,
with that.
they
Thank you.
asked a lot of great questions.
And I did want to comment, I was just thinking, we had the Super Bowl in February, March Madness was this month. I think probably the horse races are coming, just different things. It's like every month or every season, there's something, baseball season starting. So there's a lot of opportunities, unfortunately, for people to put themselves in high risk situations or be triggered. And again, like Earl was saying, what other activities can they do? And, Stephen's very big on, how do you continue recovery? So just kind of being mindful that there's a lot of things that we normally do as a family with their friends, even playing golf. There's a lot of betting on golf for any golfers or people, they can bet on every hole. That can be an issue. So even some of their healthy activities can be high risk situations for people, and combining alcohol, just, socializing can it'll let down their guard of like, well, maybe I can gamble or forget. And if there's any other substance use or anxiety, depression, mental health issues as well. So it really is ongoing to identify what other things that we're dealing with besides just the gambling, and even substance abuse is like that as well, right? Are there relationship issues? So, working through all those layers is very important for a lot of our clients, and trying to have them be aware of them and continue to work on them. And again, the motivation, I know Paul had also mentioned, if someone's not motivated to change, then, that's, we have to work with them on trying to get them to identify what changes they might want to make if and when they're ready.
And the
And thank you,
challenges are
everyone.
even greater because gambling is becoming more and more normalized, more and more part of our society and our culture.
Yes, it is. Thank you for that. We do have a question from Jeff McKenna. How bad is the problem in that demographic? Have the numbers increased with online betting? And I think he's referring to the younger demographic, if I'm guessing correctly.
Senior citizens, he had it.
Seniors, is he asking about? Is he, or senior citizens?
It says senior citizens at the beginning.
Oh, thank you, Jeremy. Yeah, seniors, sorry.
So I actually did a couple weeks ago, I actually did a cable access TV interview with Geraldine from Amplify in Region 2, and it was on seniors and gambling. If I didn't get the link for that yet, but she had a lot of good information on that. We kind of both presented on it, but I can certainly, when I get that link, Kathy, I can pass it along. Of the video of that, and that little television thing there we did on seniors and gambling. I'll pass that
Great.
along.
Thank you.
And something that comes up a lot for seniors, right? So whether it's at a nursing home, they'll have bingo. And I don't think people have to pay a lot, but the bus trips that they used to have, but just bingo in general at the churches. So there's a lot of ways that seniors might engage with their younger family members, and it becomes a family activity. And that one seems innocuous, right? Playing bingo, but it can be something that nobody really notices. Especially for seniors, and then sometimes the younger grandkids can go with them at a certain age. So that's one way I think too that we haven't seen a lot lately again, but a few years ago that was one of the bigger issues that would come up with some of our older clients as well.
And there is more research going on right now, prevalence studies and things like that. So hopefully, in the not too distant future, we'll have more research on prevalence in Connecticut.
I see Jeremy has his hand raised.
Great job, everybody, with the presentation. The information was really spot on. So my comment really is just back to Jeff about seniors and online gambling. I think what we have to also just kind of keep in mind is online, even though people have illegally gambled online for a number of years, legalized online gambling just really started October of 2021. So, like the team talked about today with the hidden nature of this addiction, unfortunately, we won't see some of the repercussions of this expansion for probably a number of years. So that's why it's really important that if you do know folks who are of the older age demographic, and that they gamble, it's good to check in on them every once in a while, see what they're doing, see maybe if you have a loved one who is in that age group, check on their finances if you have that ability, or go visit, check around the house and make sure that all of their needs are being met, and there's food in the refrigerator, and some real basic stuff like that. But unfortunately, the numbers haven't come in. People haven't started reaching out. I mean, we have gotten a number of increased calls to the helpline, but I think all in all, we won't really know for sure for another couple of years when people start to really have issues and start reaching out, because online casino particularly, it's kind of like for many people, it's a slow drip, right? It starts out very slow, very easy, kind of, slow, and it's kind of just like any other substance of addiction. It gradually increases over the course of time. So,
thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate those comments. I'm going to just kind of close things out here as it's 1:26, and we really just appreciate everybody's comments and questions. Great discussions, everybody. I'm going to be launching a poll to, it's a call to action. That's what we're calling it. So by this Friday, if you could name one thing that you'll do to share what you learned today, what would that be? We're giving you lots of options. We hope that.
Or if you thought of an option that's not on there, feel free to throw it in the chat.
Excellent, Abby. Yes, thank you. Also, Abby dropped the evaluation link into the chat. So if you haven't already done so, if you could just click on that link, we would really appreciate it if you would fill that out. We really do review all the feedback from folks when we host an event. So I'm going to thank you in advance for completing that. And just a little bit of housekeeping as we let folks continue to answer that poll. We will be sending out a copy of the slide deck following today's program. We will be posting the recording. So if you like what you heard and you want to have folks that you know listen to it, we will have that available on our website. You will be receiving a certificate with your 1.5 CEUs from the Connecticut Certification Board. And also we are offering those from the International Gambling Counselor Certification Board. Thank you to our partners at the Connecticut Council on Problem Gambling. You will receive one certificate with both of those credentials listed. And so that's for folks, you know, who were with us this afternoon. So happy to have you all here. And I'm going to end the poll. Looks like we have so many of you engaged with this process, which is great. Thank you so much. And we will be the last to leave the Zoom room. So if anyone has a lingering thought or question that they'd like to share with us or the folks from MCCA, I just want to thank Earl Sanford and Stephen Matos and Elizabeth Genovese for being here with us today and giving us their time to share all of the wonderful work that they are doing and everyone else around the state to provide supports and help for those who struggle with gambling. I hope you will visit our website. Please consider joining our gambling awareness team. We're always happy to have new members. You can contact either me or Abby. And if you could just give us a little bit of time to get those certificates out to you, you know, by next week at the latest, we will have that to you. And please fill out the evaluation. And thank you all so much for coming. And I hope that the rest of your Gambling Awareness Month is great. I know there's only a couple more days, but I know that there are still some additional events that are happening as we close things up. Our folks, our partners over in Region 2 are hosting a webinar tomorrow about video gaming. I'm sure there's other things that are happening as well. So thank you all so much. And we're going to hang on here if anyone needs to talk to us. Thank you. I'm going to stop recording.
You took the words